वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः नमो पंकजनाभाय नमो पंकजमालिने नमो पंकजनेत्राय नमस्ते पंकजांग्रये Hare Krishna. Welcome all of you all for our SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM overview sessions. So the last 2 weeks we have been discussing chapter 15 of the first canto of SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM, which is entitled The Pandavas Retire Timely. And we have completed major of this chapter, a small portion is left. But just a quick recap of what we have been discussing till here. So we saw that this chapter begins with Yudishthira asking Arjuna. In fact, the previous chapter is Yudishthira asking Arjuna various reasons why he is sad, despondent. And Arjuna, after hearing the inquiries of Maharaj Yudishthira, Arjuna feels a lot of separation from Krishna. And Arjuna, in that separation, his mouth dries up, his face loses his luster, his heart dries up. And Arjuna, with great difficulty, he tells Yudhishthira Maharaj, Vanchitoham Maharaja Harina Bandhurupina. My dear king, I have lost my best friend who is the Supreme Lord Hari. And Arjuna says, in separation from Lord Krishna, the entire world appears to be zero, or the entire my life appears to be a body without any soul. In this way, Arjuna is feeling a lot of separation from Krishna. And then this particular section, verse number 7 to 17, Arjuna recalls Lord Krishna's favor and protection. How by Lord Krishna's mercy, Arjuna achieved so many things in life. We saw this whole discussion, the first week, the second week also we did a recap on this. So Arjuna remembers how he won the hand of Draupadi, how they got that palace made by Maya, Danav and all that. And then Arjuna, because he's feeling a lot of separation from Krishna, now in the absence of Lord Krishna, what does Arjuna do? Arjuna remembers the message of the Bhagavad Gita. He focuses on the instructions of that Supreme Lord. This is what we were discussing, that Arjuna, at this point, Krishna is not with him. Whenever he would have a problem, he would approach Lord Krishna. This time Lord Krishna is not there. But Lord Krishna's instructions in the form of Bhagavad Gita is always there. Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of ISKCON, many devotees, when Srila Prabhupada was there in this world, all devotees wanted the physical association of Srila Prabhupada. But Prabhupada would say, whatever I have to speak, I have spoken in my books. So the best way we can associate with Lord Krishna and the great devotees is by reading the books. So Arjuna focuses on the instructions of Bhagavad Gita. And by focusing on the instructions of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna's heart is relieved. And then we saw that particular verse, text 27, Desha Kala Kritanani. That means this instruction of Bhagavad Gita is meant for all times, all places. And the result of taking shelter of the wisdom of Gita, again and again is that our burning of our heart, the distress that we have, everything is removed. So in this way, Arjuna remembers the lotus feet of Krishna, and he remembers his deep friendship with Lord Krishna. He's remembering all the various incidences that Lord Krishna had with him. And in this way, Arjuna tells Lord Krishna that, he tells Yudishthira Maharaj that I've lost my very dear friend, that Supreme Lord. So this was this particular section. And then we saw from 32 onwards, almost we had started to begin this section. Yudishthira Maharaj, when he hears that Lord Krishna has departed, Yudishthira already had his doubts. Now when he has got that confirmed news that Lord Krishna has departed, Yudishthira also decides to wind up his life and go back to the spiritual world. So in this whole section, the few verses that we discussed, we were discussing this word ekanta bhaktya. This word ekanta bhaktya comes again and again. So Arjuna also became absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna. Yudhishthira also became absorbed in the thoughts of Krishna. And hearing the conversation of Arjuna and Yudhishthira Maharaj, who was overhearing this, Kunti Maharani. And she also focused her full attention on Lord Krishna, ekanta bhaktya, and then she also got released. In this way, Yudhishthira Maharaj, he understands that after the disappearance of Lord Krishna, we'll just continue from text 36. Yada mukundo bhagwan imamahim jaho satanva shravaniya satkata tadahar eva pratibud chetasam abhadra hetu kalir anvavartata. So we saw this yada tada. So it says that as soon as Lord Krishna, Mukundo Bhagavan Imam Mahim, as soon as Lord Krishna left this world, tada, from that very day, Kalyuga begins. So technical start of Kalyuga is exactly when Lord Krishna departs. And Kalyuga is a time when people who are less intelligent get bewildered by the influence of Kalyuga. So Prabhupada writes in the purport that to neutralize the effects of Kalyuga, it is very important that we are always in the shelter of Krishna. So in this way, Yudhishthira understood that Kali Yuga had come, and then he saw that the influence of Kali had spread everywhere. Text 37. Yudhishthirastat parisarpanam buddha purecha rashtracha grihe tatatmani vibhavya lobhartha jimma himsanadi dharma adharma chakram gamanaya pradyadhat. So Yudhishthira Maharaj, the word Buddha means someone who is very, very intelligent. So Yudhishthira Maharaj was very intelligent, so he understood that the influence of Kali Yuga had started. And the characteristic of Kali Yuga is whether it's falsehood, cheating, violence. And this Kali had not only entered the state, the capital, the home, it had entered into the hearts of every living entity. So Yudhishthira decided wisely that it is time for me to retire. I just want to go back. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, we discussed this last time. So Prabhupada mentions that it's not that Yudhishthira was afraid of Kali. It was not like that. Yudhishthira decided to go back to the spiritual world. He had retired from his active life for 2-3 reasons. First reason Prabhupada mentions, because he wanted to prepare himself to go back home, back to Godhead. That's the first reason. Second is, Yudhishthira was more interested in being in the company of the Lord rather than being the emperor of the world. So he was thinking, Krishna is gone, what is the point in I continuing? So he was very attached to Krishna. Second point. And third point Prabhupada mentions, Yudhishthira wanted to set an example. If he didn't retire, the future people will not retire. So in order to set an example, Yudhishthira Maharaj decided, let me just retire and go back to the spiritual world when there is already a qualified person to rule. So I think we discussed till this point. We'll text 38. Swarat potram vinayinam Atmana shushuman gune Toya nivyapatim bhumer Abhyasinchad gajavyaye. Gajavyaye is Hastinapur. So in the capital of Hastinapur, he enthroned Swarat Potram. Potram is his grandson. So before leaving, Yudishthira enthroned Parikshit Maharaj, who was his grandson. And what is the characteristic of Parikshit Maharaj? The word used is Vinayinam. Vinayinam also means humble, and Vinayinam also means well trained. So Parikshit Maharaj was well trained, not only in ruling, not only in politics, not only in military art, but Parikshit was well trained as a devotee of Lord Krishna. Yashasti bhaktir bhagavati akinchana sarver gunays tatra samasate sura harava bhaktasya kuto mahadguna manorate nasti dhavato bahi. This is the Bhagavatam shloka which says that anyone who is a devotee of Krishna automatically has good qualities. So we were discussing this point last time. The only training, the only education that is needed in society is that people become devotees of Krishna. If people become devotees, naturally good qualities will come. If you're not a devotee of Krishna, very difficult to get good qualities, because these qualities are on the level of the mind. So Parikshit Maharaj was perfectly trained like his forefathers, like Yudishthira and the Pandavas. And Prabhupada mentions here, and during Parikshit's rule, during the time of Parikshit's rule, everyone was happy. Why? Because they were having sufficient grains, fruits, vegetables, everything was sufficient. And not only that, everyone was peaceful. No one had disease, no one had anxiety. Perfect Ram Rajya. So Yudhishthir enthrones Parikshit as the king of Hastinapur. Text 39. Mathurayam tata vajram Shurasena patim tata Prajapatyam nirupyeshnim Agnin apibhad Ishwara. So then he posted Vajra or Vajranab, who was the son of Aniruddha, the great grandson of Lord Krishna, as the king of Mathura. Right? So we know, Prabhupada mentions here, Lord Krishna's son is Pradyumna, Pradyumna's son is Aniruddha. So Aniruddha is the grandson of Krishna. Aniruddha's son is Vajranab. So when the Yadu people fought with each other, Pradyumna and Aniruddha also, they left their bodies. So Vajranab was left. So Vajranab was enthroned the king of Mathura and Vrindavan. So it is explained that when Yudhishthira Maharaj enthroned Vajranab as the king of Vrindavan and Mathura, so Vajranab was thinking, I have to discover the pastime places of Lord Krishna, because by that time, the pastime places were disappearing. So that time there was a rishi called Shandilya Rishi. So he gives Vajranab a divine vision of that spiritual Vrindavan, Golok Vrindavan, and Vajranab re-establishes Vrindavan Dham, and he actually makes a lot of beautiful deities of Krishna. And three of the principal deities of Lord Krishna are still there in Vrindavan: Radha Govind, Radha Gopinath, Radha Madan Mohan. So these deities were actually made by Vajranab. Again, in time they were lost, but the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, they discovered these deities and established these deities. So what we see Vrindavan now, the credit goes to Vajranab, who actually discovered all these places. In Vrindavan there is a Samadhi also of Vajranab at this point. So Yudhishthira Maharaj very intelligently made Vajranab the king of Mathura. And what did Yudhishthira do? Yudhishthira performed a Prajapatya sacrifice, and he took sankalpa to quit his family life and enter into sannyas and vanaprastha. That's what Yudhishthira did. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, human life means there has to be varna ashrama. And in ashrama there is brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas. The whole idea is that one should ultimately reach a point of retirement. And then Prabhupada says here, especially, I'm just reading the sentence here, Prabhupada is saying, everyone's life must be arranged at least so that the last stage of life, 15 to 20 years prior to death, can be absolutely devoted to devotional service. Think about it. So Prabhupada is saying, at least if not your whole life, at least before you pass away 15-20 years, absolutely devoted to Krishna consciousness. And the idea is because we don't know, death can come at any time. So we should probably think that our time has already come, 15-20 years. And then Prabhupada says, one should not be attached to materialistic life till the end. This is a suicidal policy. One should actually retire at some point and prepare oneself to go back home, back to God. So Yudishthira Maharaj, who is the perfect king, is setting a perfect example of how one should leave also at the right time. So therefore this chapter is entitled The Pandavas Retire Timely. So it's not that they were waiting beyond time. At the right time they retired. So that's also very, very important. Text 40. Visrija tatra tatsarvam dukula vayayadikam nirmamo nirahankara sancinna shesha bandana Visrija. So at once Yudishthira Maharaj gave up his garment. He gave up his royal belt, royal crown, all these royal things he just gave up. And he became nirmamo nirahankar. Nirmamo means nothing is mine. And nirahankar matlab completely unattached, completely disinterested. And being free from all bandhana, all attachment, Yudhishthira walked away. So Prabhupada mentions here, for every situation, for every role, there is a dress. Right? So Yudhishthira was a king, there was a way the king dresses. Now he's passed the kingdom to someone else. Now there is no need for his royal dress. Yudhishthira at once gave it up. Prabhupada mentions here in the purport, to become purified of material contamination is the qualification to enter into the spiritual world. And then Prabhupada says here, no one can go to the spiritual world without such purification. And what does this purification mean? Or what does that contamination mean? So Prabhupada mentions here, we all have different designations in life. We are attached to various designations, upadhi, right? We have all these various designations that I am this, I am a king. These are all designations, right? When we took birth, what was the designation? No designation. And after death, when we go to the next life, what is our designation? Nothing. So in between, we carry a lot of designations. I am a king, I am this, I am that. We carry so many designations. But Yudhishthira is saying, to enter into the spiritual world, you have to give up all your designations. Like when you enter into the temple, you leave your slipper outside. So similarly, when we enter into the spiritual world, you just give up all your ego. So these are coverings of the ego. So therefore, we have to reach to the platform of our real designation. And what is the designation? That we are all spirit souls, servants of Krishna. The definition of bhakti, sarvopadi vinirmuktvam, tatparatvena nirmalam, rishikena rishikesha, sevanam bhaktaruchyate. What does bhakti mean? Bhakti means sarvopadi vinirmuktam. You have to be freed from all designations. Tatparatvain nirmalam. You have to make your heart pure. And then in that pure state, you enter into the spiritual world. So in this way, Yudhishthira Maharaj, he became completely unattached and gave up his royal dress and just walked away. Text 41. Vacham juhava manasi tat prana itare chatam mritva apanna sotsargam tam panchatve hi ajohavit. So Yudhishthira is winding up, right? Like you start some business, you open a shop and then at the end of the day you wind up, right? You close the shop. So Yudhishthira Maharaj had opened his duties in this world. Now he is closing down, winding up his shop. So he is closing it. So here it says, Yudhishthira amalgated his sense organs into the mind into prana, prana into breathing, apana. And then in this way, he merged basically his breathing and his total existence into the 5 elements and his body into death. and slowly is winding up like this. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, what does this mean that Yudishthira is winding up, amalgated? How do you amalgate your senses into the mind, mind into pran? So Prabhupada explains it's not a very complicated process. Just like Arjuna started to concentrate on Krishna and he disconnected from the world. We were seeing one of the previous chapters, Bhishma Dev is passing away, right? And what did Bhishma Dev do? We saw Bhishma Dev, after giving lot of instructions to Yudhishthira, Bhishma Dev, this person who spoke on thousands of topics, fought thousands of battles, Bhishma Dev stopped speaking and he focused his entire attention on Krishna and decided to wind up. So Prabhupada mentions here, the way we wrap up from this world is focusing more and more on Krishna. If we do this, then automatically there is detachment that happens. Text 42, which is like the continuation of this verse. Tritve hutvancha panchatvam tachaikatve johonmuni sarvam atmani ajuha vid brahmani atmanam avyaye. So he amalgated the 5 elements into the 3 modes of nature and then he merged that into nascence and the nascence into Brahman, like this. So basically this is what Yudhishthira did. Senses into the mind, mind into pran, pran into breathing, and then the body into the 3 gunas, gunas into prakriti, and then finally into Brahman. So you may say, what is this? This is how actually the creation happens. If you study we are the first canto, hopefully when we do the second canto, third canto, we will see how the creation happens. The creation starts with Brahman, Krishna, entering into that Mahat Tattva. So the word here used is Avyakta. Avyakta is Mahat Tattva, the sum total of all material elements. And as soon as Krishna enters into the Mahat Tattva, there is activities that start. And then there is creation of 3 gunas. Prakriti matlab there is 3 gunas. And with the 3 gunas, then there is mixture of the 3 gunas, and then there is prana, and then there is senses, mind, intelligence, everything is created. So this is how creation happens. Sarga, right? That's called creation. So now to wind up also, you have to wind up in that way. So basically, if we have to enter into the spiritual world, we have to give up all material elements. The body also you give up, and more than the body, you have to give up the subtle body of mind, intelligence, ego. You give it up. And then as pure spirit, you enter into the spiritual world. So when someone is getting liberated, he takes bath in the Virja Nadi. And in the Virja Nadi, the material body, subtle and gross, goes out. And in the pure spirit form, he enters into the spiritual world. So in this way, Yudhishthira Maharaj is practically winding up everything. He's closing down his shop, closing down everything. Just like now, someone may have to answer some interview or whatever. You borrow few things from different people, right? You go and answer your interview. When the job is done, then you go around returning those things back, right? So similarly, this material body, we have borrowed it from Prakriti. So at the time of liberation, when we actually leave, we are supposed to return the material elements. Earth goes to earth, water goes to water. You return the material elements back to the material things, Prakriti, and as pure spirit, you walk out. So that's what Yudhishthira is doing. He's just walking out completely detached. Text 43. Chiravasa niraharo Bhagavan mukta murdaja Darshayan atmano rupam Jadon matta pishachavat Anaveksha mano niragar Ashranvan badiro yata. So Yudhishthira, what he did? Chiravasa niraharo. He accepted torn clothing. Can you imagine this? The emperor of the world, kings, in those days they would dress very, very royally. So Yudhishthira, and when someone has such royal dress, once that is removed, you can't survive. Prabhupada tells the story. Prabhupada mentions it in the Bhagavatam purports also. There was one particular person, one big politician during Prabhupada's time, and he was very attached to the comforts in his place. And Gandhi, Gandhiji started this movement of quit, non-violence or, non-cooperation movement basically. So he was forced to give up all his facilities. He was so attached to the facilities, when he lost all those facilities, in few years he just died. He just couldn't handle it. So Yudhishthira, can you imagine the kind of dress and the kind of opulence this person had? Now Yudhishthira gives up everything and is what he's wearing now? Torn clothing. 2 days later on Wednesday is Guru Purnima. Guru Purnima is also the tithi of Sanatan Goswami's disappearance day. Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, they were like filthy rich. They had so much money 500 years ago. They were like billionaires, trillionaires. But Sanatan Goswami gives all that up and becomes a mendicant. And he becomes a mendicant, he wears exactly like this, torn clothing. When Sanatan Goswami was in Varanasi and one devotee, Tapan Mishra, told Sanatan Goswami, take my new dhoti. Sanatan Goswami said, all that is gone. Now I don't want anything new. Give me your torn cloth. So Yudhishthira in this way, as a perfect renunciate, he is wearing torn clothes. And then Niraharo, he gave up eating solid food. As a king, you are used to so much opulent food, he just gave up all that. And then he allowed his hair to hang loose and he became voluntarily dumb. He stopped speaking. And the look that he had, here it says, Jadon Matta Pishachavat. You understand what is Pishacha? Pishacha is like a madman. So Yudhishthira appeared like a madman. Probably when Yudhishthira would dress as a king, there would be like people who dress him. Now he's not even bothered about his looks. Completely detached. This Vesha is called an Avaduta Vesha. If there is time, we will sing a song of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, one of our great acharyas, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He also had this mood. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a very aristocratic judge during the British time. But his prayer is, my dear Lord, when will I accept this Avaduta Vesh? That means not bothered about what people think. Right? We are so much in the consciousness of society. What will society think? We half the time will live for society only. Right? More than what we are supposed to do. So Yudhishthira is free from all that. All social obligations gone. And he's dressed like a madman. And then not only is that he stops speaking, he also acts like a deaf man. He stops hearing anything material. And then he just walks alone, not even looking whether his brothers are following him. Not dependent on anything. So this is the level of Yudhishthira. So Prabhupada writes here, this is the complete stage of sannyas where there is complete fearlessness. You're not bothered about anyone, you are just walking. And Yudhishthira starts to walk. Text 44. Udichin pariveshasham gata purvam mahatmabi hridi brahma param dhyayan navarteta yato gata. So Yudhishthira Maharaj started to walk towards the north, Udichin. So generally, the idea of renunciation in the land of India is, as soon as you get the mood of renunciation, where do you go? Himalaya. If you go to Himalaya, that's it. It's understood that nowadays people go to Chardham and come back. Previously, Chardham, you're not going to come back out from there only. Right? That's the idea of renunciation. So people will go to Himalayas, north, completely renounced. And here it says, Gata Purvam Mahatma. So Yudhishthira is a Mahatma and he is following the footsteps of previous Mahatmas. And all the kings in this line of Yudhishthira Maharaj, all his forefathers did the same thing. And Prabhupada mentions here many times, this is the system of the kings in the land of India, Raja Rishis. When they would reach the right age, they would walk off and give the kingdom to their children. We see Lord Ram also did that. Lord Ram, he gave the kingdom to Lava and Kush. He also walked away like a sannyasi. Everyone did that. So Yudhishthira also walked like that. And what did he do? Hridi Brahma Param Dhyayan. This is the most important thing. Brahma Param, ya Para Brahma. Who is Para Brahma? Krishna. And what did Yudhishthira do? Dhyayan. He started to worship Krishna with full attention. Though the idea of renunciation is just not to give up material, but to get attached to Krishna. So detachment, real detachment, when you are more and more attached to Krishna. And Prabhupada says here in the purport, Para Brahma, Brahma Para. Who is this Krishna? It comes in many places. The 10th canto, the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna declares, Para Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram Paramam Bhava. Krishna is that Parabrahma. So Yudhishthira Maharaj gives up everything. So Prabhupada mentions also in the purport that the training and education of Yudhishthira was perfect, that he was focusing on his duty to go back home, back to Godhead. Even a king like Yudhishthira was such a pious king, still he decided that I have to perfect my life and go back to the spiritual world. So this is how someone should be very serious about entering into the spiritual world. Text 45 to 51, we'll see that not only Yudhishthira walked away. It's not that he told the brothers, you come along. He said everyone will do whatever they want to do. He walked away. And the brothers also follow. Draupadi, everyone follows that path. Text 45. Sarvetam anu nirjagmur bhratara krita nishchaya kalina dharma mitrena drishtva sprishta prajabhuvi. The younger brothers of Yudhishthira, they also are very intelligent, and they observed that Kali had already come, and they also saw that it's already affected the citizens. So therefore, Krita Nishchaya, they also decided that we will also follow the footsteps of our elder brother Yudhishthira, and they also retired. So Prabhupada mentions here, Yudhishthira was perfectly trained, the brothers also were trained. And these brothers of Yudhishthira Maharaj, the 4 Pandavas, they were very powerful, but they were very obedient to Yudhishthira Maharaj. Whatever he would do, they would have disagreed at some point, but finally they would surrender to him and follow his path. So Prabhupada mentions here, this is how everyone should follow. Not only Yudhishthira, the Pandavas also followed. So similarly, following the footsteps of these great souls, we also should at some point focus on, as Prabhupada said, that 15-20 years focusing on full devotional service. That should be our focus. Text 46. Te sadhu krita sarvarta gyatva antikam atmana manasa dharayamashur vaikunta charanambujam. Before I get into this, Prabhupada mentioned something very interesting in the previous purport. So Prabhupada mentions here, people generally in this world at some point 50, 51, there is a retirement. But Prabhupada mentions here, retired men are bewildered how to engage themselves in the last days of life. There is no spirituality. They get like completely confused how to engage themselves. So therefore training. If you are trained well before, then when that stage of retirement comes, you know what to do. You know to chant Hare Krishna, you know to read, you know to engage yourself. So this training has to come before. I think our one of our very senior grahasthas from Bombay, Anand Vandamru, he mentioned a very interesting point. In Krishna consciousness, what you learn in the initial days, like someone who comes in Krishna consciousness at the age of 20, 25, what kind of training, what kind of mindsets that you develop at that age probably will continue lifelong. Very difficult to change it. So initially what training comes in, what kicks in, that only will continue. So therefore, initially only people get trained in spirituality, the retirement becomes much more meaningful, much more blissful. Otherwise, it becomes like a big question of what to do when you are retired. Text 46 that we just read now, it mentions here, Te sadhu krita sarvartha. So, sadhu krita means what? Krita means activity. Sadhu krita means activity of a saint. Yudhishthira and the 4 Pandavas, whatever they performed was sadhu krita, was saintly activities. Even their ruling was saintly. They were not just ruling to earn money or, show their power. They were ruling for the principle of propagating dharma. So sadhu krita, te sadhu krita sarvartha. And then such Pandavas, jnana ya antikam. Jnana means knowledge. And antikam means what? Conclusion of knowledge. So they all knew jnana va antikam atmana. So they understood that the conclusion of knowledge, what is it? Vaikunta charanambujam. Vaikunta charanambujam refers to Krishna's lotus feet. So what is the conclusion of all knowledge? Krishna is the conclusion of all knowledge. So Jnana Antikam basically means Bhakti Vedanta, Srila Prabhupada's name. So the conclusion of Ved, there is Vedas and there is something called Vedanta. The conclusion of Vedas, the conclusion of knowledge. What is the conclusion of all knowledge? To do bhakti to Krishna. So what did the Pandavas do? Manasa dharaya mashur vaikunta charanam bhujam. So with their mind, they started to do dhyan, meditation, bhakti on the lotus feet of Krishna. So we are seeing this theme continuously in the Bhagavatam. The prayers of Kunti, Bhishma, Pandavas, whatever they are doing, all of them follow the path of devotional service. So Prabhupada writes here, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha is not the conclusion of knowledge. Jnana, Yoga is not the conclusion of knowledge. The conclusion of knowledge is Vaikunta Charanambujam. Worshipping Krishna is the conclusion of all knowledge. Vedescha sarver ahameva vedyo vedanta krit veda videva chaham bahunam janmanam ante jnanavama prapadyate vasudeva sarvamiti sa mahatma sadurlabha. The conclusion of all knowledge is to worship Krishna. This is what all the great Mahatmas have done. So they started to meditate on Lord Krishna without interruption. Text 47-48. Tadhyano riktaya bhaktya vishuddho dishana pare tasmin narayana pade ekanta matayogatim avapur duravapamte asadbir vishayatmabhi viduta kalmasastanam vrajenatmaivahi. So what they did, tadhyano riktaya bhaktya. So again the word bhakti. So they started to practice pure devotional service to Krishna, focused devotional service. So by their constant devotional service, what happened? Asatbir vishayatma bhi. Whatever impurities were there, everything was destroyed. Viduta kalmasha means all impurities destroyed. And in this way, they perform devotional service ekantmatayo gatim. So we are seeing this word come again and again. Ekantamati, ekanta bhakti. In this particular chapter, it has come multiple times. Kunti, Pandavas, everything they perform their bhakti how? Ekantamati. What is Ekantamati? How does Prabhupada translate it? So Prabhupada in word to word says, Ekantamati means fixed in the Supreme with one pointed attention. Vyavasatmika buddhi ekeha kurunandana. One pointed focus, not diverting here and there. This is called unalloyed devotion. So in this way, they attain that one pointed devotion, meditation without deviation. And by doing this, what happened? Viduta kalmasha, all their impurities were destroyed, and they attain that Supreme Lord's abode, Vaikunta, in their same bodies. The self same body, they attain the spiritual world. Just like Tukaram Maharaj, in the self same body, he had ascended into the spiritual world. The Pandavas also entered into the spiritual world in the self same body. So in this way, the Pandavas attained liberation basically. They attained the spiritual world, Golok Vrindavan. Text 49. Viduropi parityajya rabashe deham atmana Krishna vishena chachitta pitrabi swashayam yayo. So, in the previous chapter, it was described that Vidura had taken Dhritarashtra and Gandhari to the forest, and at one time they had made a small thatched hut for themselves, Dhritarashtra and Gandhari. So Dhritarashtra was in the hut, and suddenly through his meditation, fire came from his body. His body also got burnt, the hut also got burnt. And Gandhari entered into the fire. She also left her body. That time Vidura leaves from there, very astonished. He just walks from there. So now it says, what happens to Vidura? So, Viduropi parityajya. So Vidura also at some time quit his body. How? Where? Prabhashe deham atmana. At Prabhashetra. So while doing his pilgrimage, he reached again to Prabhas Kshetra. There he quit his body. And how did he quit his body? Krishna avashena tat chitta. So completely absorbed, Krishna avashena, completely absorbed in thought of Krishna. So we saw in this particular chapter, we saw the passing away of Bhishmadev. We saw how Kunti, Ekanta Matayo, thinking of Krishna, she left her body. We saw what the Pandavas did. We saw what Vidura did. Practically every great person, and towards the end of this canto, we will see what Parikshit is going to do. All of them, Krishna avashena. Avesh means completely absorbed in Krishna. Tat chitta. Completely developing that kind of absorption, they quit their body. Lord Krishna tells in the Bhagavad Gita, 8th chapter, Antakale cha mameva smaran muktva kalevaram ya prayati samadbhavam yasti nasti atra samshir. Lord Krishna says, anyone who remembers me at the time of death, without deviation, such a person will enter into the spiritual world. So all these great personalities did that. But something interesting, for the Pandavas it is said that they enter into the spiritual world. Vidura didn't go to the spiritual world. He went to Pitruloka first. And in Pitruloka, the citizens of Pitruloka welcomed him. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, there is a difference between Vidura and Pandavas. Pandavas are an eternal associate of the Lord. And Vidura is like a demigod, Yamaraj, who's come to serve the Lord for a particular purpose. Right? And then Prabhupada mentions, we have heard that story of how Manduka Rishi curses Yamaraj, and Yamaraj comes as Vidura, as a Shudra, born in a Shudra family for 100 years. So as soon as that curse is over, Vidura goes back to first the Pitruloka, because when Yamaraj was there as Vidura, Aryama, the main demigod in charge for Pitruloka, was there at Yamaloka doing those duties there. So Vidura goes to Pitruloka first, the residents welcome him, Aryama comes there, and then he goes back to his abode of Yamaloka. So Prabhupada mentions here, people generally are afraid of Yamaraj. Why? Because Yamaraj gives punishment. But Prabhupada says here, but for devotees, they don't have to fear Yamaraj. Because Yamaraj is a very good friend of the devotees. To the devotees, is a cordial friend. But to the non-devotees, is fear personified. So if you become a devotee of Krishna, you don't have to worry. Yamaraj is your friend. Right? There's nothing to worry. So in this way, Prabhupada says, Vidura also leaves his body and enters into Pitrulok and then Yamlok. Text 50. Draupadi cha tadagyaya patinam anapekshatam Vasudeve Bhagavati Hi Ekantamati Apatam. Again, we are seeing this word Ekantamati again. We'll go back and do like a recap of how many times we have seen this word Ekantamati. So what does Draupadi do? Draupadi Tadhagyanya, when she came to know that Lord Krishna has left the world, what she did, and she saw that her husbands also left. And when the husbands left, all 5 of them, they didn't care for Draupadi. All this while they took care of Draupadi. In the final moment, they just left her and walked. And what she did, because she was also trained, she also Vasudeve Bhagavati, right? Vasudev Krishna was Bhagavan. He ekantamati apatam, absorbed in full thoughts of Krishna. She also walked away and entered into the spiritual world in the same body. Prabhupada mentions here, not only Draupadi, but Subhadra also followed that same path. Prabhupada writes a brilliant purport. I'll just read this purport. It's like practically like the climax of this entire chapter, this purport. If we can meditate on this purport, there is so much deep meaning in it. So Prabhupada says, when flying an airplane, one cannot take care of other planes. If you are flying one airplane, you can't get into another airplane and help. So Prabhupada says here, everyone has to take care of their plane. And if there is danger, no plane can help. Everyone has to fly their plane. Where help will come? Before the pilot takes off, there is training in the ground. Training all happens. But after some point, after you are trained, you are left on your own, you are supposed to fly on your own. So Prabhupada says here, similarly, in the ground, the spiritual master, father, mother, relative, everyone is supposed to give training. How to take off. How to take off your flight to the spiritual world. That training comes here. So these satsangs are basically like a training ground. Or when you read Gita, Bhagavatam, it's like a training ground. How to take off. But at the time of death, no one will come to help you. You have to fly your plane. So therefore, you have to get trained well and fly your plane. We will see this particular canto, or towards the end of the entire Bhagavatam. Shukdev Goswami meets Parikshit. We will see the next few chapters. Parikshit comes in picture, and Parikshit is cursed that he will die in 7 days. Parikshit takes shelter of Shukdev Goswami. Shukdev Goswami speaks Bhagavatam for 7 days, and then he walks away. I've trained you, now you fly your plane. The time of death, Shukdev was not there with Parikshit. He has to face his own death. He walked away. Similarly, the Pandavas walked away because they understood that this journey, the other journeys in life you can be together. But in this, the final journey, the final yatra, no one can come with you. You have to walk it alone. You have to fly your plane. So therefore, as the training is here, get trained properly. So Prabhupada mentions here, similarly, a guru or a father or a husband here are supposed to train their dependents. So Draupadi was very fortunate that she had 5 husbands and she was perfectly trained in bhakti to Krishna. So she was not agitated when the husbands went away because she was trained. And what she did, as per her training, she at once took to concentration on the lotus feet of the Lord with full absorption. And she and Draupadi both attain the same destination. They reach the spiritual world in their same bodies. So again the word ekantamati. So let's do like a homework. How many times this word ekantamati has come? So in this particular verse, text 50, we see ekantamati coming in for Draupadi and Subhadra. Ekantamati matlab one pointed focus, absorption in Krishna. Right? We see in text 49, Krishna avashena, absorption in Krishna for Vidura. Almost the same thing. We see again in text 47, that was 49, text 47, when the brothers followed Yudishthira Maharaj, the word is ekantamatayo gatim, one pointed focus. Tasmin narayana pade, completely focusing on Krishna, with one pointed focus. They also attain that path. And then, let me just go back to the verses. If we read Bhagavatam like this, we will gain a lot of knowledge. So we see, I think it comes for Kunti Maharani. Text 33, Ekanta Bhaktya, how Kunti also focused. So once in 33 and again in again in 43, 2, not 43, 45, second time, 47, second time, Ekantamatayo. Then for Vidura, Krishna Vashena, the third time, and then for Draupadi, fourth time. So in one chapter, the word Ekantamati, one pointed focus to Krishna comes. So therefore, the essence of this chapter is that only. The essence of the chapter, we have to get trained. Like as Prabhupada says, we have to get ready to fly our own planes. And the training is basically Ekantamati, one pointed focus, one pointed devotion to Krishna. This is what we have to get trained in. If we do this, then we will be able to fly our own plane. Finally, text 51, which is the Falastuti. What is the result of hearing this chapter attentively? Yaha shraddaya, yad shraddaya itad bhagavat priyanam, pandu sutanam, iti samprayanam shrunoti alam swastyanam pavitram labdva haro bhaktim upaiti siddhim. So here it says, this subject matter of the Pandavas departing timely, this subject matter is completely pure. Swastyanam pavitram. Swasti is pure. And pavitram is, swasti is auspicious, pavitram is pure. So this subject matter of the Pandavas going back to the spiritual world is very, very auspicious and pure. And anyone who hears this, yah shraddhayaitat, anyone who hears this with great devotion, what will happen? Labdva haro bhaktim. By hearing this chapter, what will happen? One will get bhakti to Hari. And then upaiti siddhim, one will attain the highest perfection. So Prabhupada mentions in the purport, SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM is a narration of the Supreme Lord and devotees like the Pandavas. Bhagavat Priyanam, great devotees like Pandavas. And the narration of the Supreme Lord and the devotees are absolute. And thus, when we hear it with devotional attitude, what we are doing? We are associating with the Lord and His constant companions. This is a very important point. Yesterday in one satsang, we were mentioning the same thing. When we hear about these pastimes, we are actually associating with these personalities. As I told you, Prabhupada, one time his disciples came to Srila Prabhupada and told Prabhupada, Prabhupada, we are not getting your physical association. So many others are getting. Prabhupada said, I give my association in the form of my books. Whatever I have to speak, I have written in the books. Read my books, you will associate with me. So Prabhupada is mentioning this point. When we read about these pastimes, we are actually associating with Krishna, the Pandavas and all these personalities. And by the process of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, one can attain the highest perfection of life. And what is that? Namely, going back home, back to Godhead, without failure. We were discussing the life of Tukaram Maharaj. What did Tukaram Maharaj do? In one of his Abhang, Tukaram Maharaj says, just hear Gita Bhagavat regularly and chant Hare Krishna. Simple. That's what Tukaram Maharaj did throughout his life. And Vaikuntha Viman comes. This Pandavas retiring timely is 5,000 years ago. You may say, does this work now? Tukaram's story is just 500 years ago. Not even 500, it's 450 years ago. Tukaram Maharaj went to the spiritual world in the same body, ascended the spiritual world. And what did he do? Same thing, same path he followed. Ekantamati Vasudeve Bhagavati, focused on pure devotion to Vittala, Krishna, with one pointed attention, living a very humble, very simple life, and then entered into the spiritual world. So that's what awaits us if we actually follow this path. So in conclusion, the summary of this particular chapter, we saw this chapter begins with Arjuna's strong feeling of separation from Krishna, and Arjuna remembering all the pastimes of Krishna that he spent with Krishna, sitting with him, eating with him, remembering the smiles of Krishna. He also recalls all the favors and protection Lord Krishna showered on him. And then, because he's feeling great separation from Krishna, he feels that his entire life is void. He's feeling very hopeless. But at that point of hopelessness, he focuses on the instructions of Krishna. The Vapu, the physical form of Krishna is not there. The instructions of Krishna, Vani is there. He focuses on that and he attains transcendence. He becomes liberated. And Yudishthira, hearing this, he retires. He just walks away like a madman. And following Yudishthira, Pandavas, Draupadi, Vidura, all of them depart. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Anyone has any questions, any comments?
The spiritual form of after taking part in the journey world, then you said all the five elements are doing that. And after they take it
So Bharti is asking basically, at the time of liberation, we give up our gross and subtle body, we enter into the spiritual world in a spiritual body. So basically, it is explained that just like we have a material form, so Prabhupada gives this example. When you have a glove, the glove has 5 fingers. Why? Because your hand has 5 fingers. So the material, like our body as a form, That means what? The spirit also has a form. Otherwise, how can a body have a form? So spirit also has a form. But that form is completely spiritual. In the material world, the Atma comes in a seed form. Bija, Swarupa. The Atma is here. When it enters into the spiritual world, it regains its original form. Original form, basically, just like you have the 5 rasas, Shantaras, Dasyaras, Sakyaras, Vatsalyaras, Madhuryaras. So some of us in that spiritual world, we may be a friend of Krishna, we may be a cow or a servant of Krishna, anyway, in any form. So we will attain that spiritual form. That's what it means. We will attain that form when we come out from the other place, Virjanadi. So you take bath here, when you come out, you have a different spiritual form. And Prabhupada does mention here, if you remember this particular chapter, when, not in this chapter, in the 11th canto of, the 11th chapter of SRIMAD of Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Krishna shows the Virat Roop Darshan to Arjuna. Arjuna wanted to see that universal form. So Lord Krishna shows that, and Arjuna is like very bewildered seeing this huge ferocious form. But even after seeing the Virat Rupa, Arjuna's prayer is, Arjuna is remembering all the friendship that he had with Krishna. So Prabhupada mentions there, that means what? That means the eternal position of Arjuna is Sakyaras. That can never be taken away from him. So similarly, for some time he's overcome by that Vismayaras, but then Sakyaras comes back again. So Prabhupada mentions there that similarly all of us have some eternal relationship with Krishna in the spiritual world. At this point it may seem to be a little forgotten, but as we practice bhakti, we become aware even in this world, and when we enter into the spiritual world, that form comes back, and in that form we enter. Okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we have 4 chapters to go, and these 4 chapters are about Parikshit Maharaj. So till now we saw basically 2-3 chapters ago, Shaunakadi Rishi asked the question again to Sutta Goswami, please tell about Parikshit's activities and his departure. Birth though he had already mentioned. In order to mention activities, Sutta Goswami mentions this point of Pandavas retired timely. The next chapter is, now Parikshit is already the king. We saw he's become the king now. He's made the king. The next chapter is how Parikshit rules this world. What kind of rule he has. And then finally how Parikshit is cursed and how he departs. The next 4 chapters are very, very important chapters. So we'll try to see how we complete it. Hopefully before Janmashtami. Let's see. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
इसको बंद किया, this video.